Minutes, please.
Mr. President, after Copenhagen, let us reassess the whole global warming story. At Copenhagen, we had the irony not just of Climate Gate 2, but also the onset of one of the harshest winters in decades. Since then, we have seen the debunking of the Potsdam sea level scare, the Goddard Institute has been caught fiddling the temperature records, the vanishing Himalayan glaciers have been exposed as a fantasy, Mr. Pachauri has emerged as a climate change profiteer. The world is cooling, global warming is a fraud. This is not a victimless crime. Carbon taxes push up fuel prices, killing our old folk as we speak. The billions wasted researching this non-existent problem are billions that cannot be spent defeating real scourges, such as Alzheimer's, or ending real environmental disasters, such as deforestation. Carbon credit trading makes billions for city sharks at the expenses of families in poverty. The loss of agricultural land to biofuels has already doubled world food prices, so millions are starving while greedy corporations make even fatter profits. Those pushing the unscientific nonsense of man-made climate change, Shell, Monsanto, the international banks, Bilderberg One Worlders, carbon billionaires and their useful idiot allies on the left are running the biggest fraud in human history. They must and will be called to account, as should be their collaborators in places such as this. Thank you.
Speaker is Chris Davis. He has 2 minutes, please.
And fellow collaborators, we need to move on from Copenhagen. Truth is, we don't know the way. Stumbling around in the dark, I think we just simply have to explore every opportunity and hope that one or more of them will take us forward. But I am sure we have to try and maintain our ambitions and keep our leadership. And on this point, there is a crucial decision coming up within the next fortnight, and I want to know what the Presidency is going to do to get it right. 40% of our emissions come from the fossil fuels burnt in our power stations. That is why the development of carbon capture and storage technology is recognised as so important. That is why the Council, 3 years ago, agreed that we should try and build up to 12 demonstration projects by 2015. Now, we agreed a year ago a method of financing those projects, to use 300 million allowances from the emissions trading scheme. It took 3 months for that idea to come from Parliament to get approval by the Council. Unlocked a door. But 12 months later, we still have not agreed how to choose the projects or use the money. The Commission has finally put forward a draft decision. It proposes only 8 CCS projects, and the timetable it recommends means that it will be impossible for them all to be built by 2015. Commissioner Redden has got the hot seat then. I hope someone will pass him a note between now and the end of the debate so he can explain the lack of ambition in this document. But it must be agreed, however inadequate. We have got to move forward. It will be debated at a meeting of the Council's Climate Change Committee on the 2nd of February. And there is opposition from some Member States who oppose the Commission having a final say over the selection of projects and the use and distribution of the money. Now, this meeting will be the first opportunity since Copenhagen for the European Union to demonstrate whether it is going forward and taking practical steps or going to slip backwards. It is quite a crucial test, both for the Commission and the Presidency. So my question, President, to the Minister is the Presidency going to ensure that we get agreement at that meeting, or are you going to drop the ball?
Well, Mr. President, of course, you can tell I'm a sceptic because I don't dress like a scarecrow. I fought my way through the blizzard in Copenhagen, like many of you did. Interesting, isn't it, that we've had the coldest winter so far on record in London for 30 years. It's the same in Poland, it's the same in Korea, it's the same in China. We've had the coldest temperatures in Florida, Arizona, Texas, the first snow in Texas, I think, for 100 years. And of course, as Giles Coren of the London Times said, my goodness me, we simply don't get it. Of course, that's what global warming is all about. We've got to get used to freezing temperatures. Well, we've seen the Al Gore hockey stick, which is still, I gather, being shown in London state schools. Al Gore, snake oil salesman, crook. We've seen Professor Jones from the East Anglia University, crook. And now, you won't know about this yet because it's been kept out of the public domain, the New Zealand National Climate Database, and I have the figures here, all fraudulent. When are you all going to wake up? Scam, scam, scam.
Senor Bloom. Senor Bloom.
Mr. Bloom, Chris Davis has a question that he wants to ask of you. Would you mind answering such a question?
Senor Davis.
Mr. Davis, please make it as brief as possible, sir.
Well, apparently all the science of climate change is nonsense, according to Mr. Bloom, because we've had a cold winter. I wonder if Mr. Bloom would like to tell the House the difference between climate and weather.
Climate, Mr. Davis, is what we all have to put up with.
To hand the floor to Mr. Helmer for 1 minute.
President, I have good news for the House. In common with many scientists, I personally have concluded that there is no climate crisis. Global sea levels are not rising significantly, and as the IPCC has been forced to admit, Himalayan glaciers are not in rapid retreat. The small increase in mean global temperatures over the last 100 years is entirely consistent with well-established long-term natural climate changes. Copenhagen showed that many nations, especially China and India, are simply not prepared to sacrifice economic performance to solve an entirely speculative problem. In Britain, a majority of voters no longer believe in man-made climate change, and they won't pay for futile and pointless attempts at mitigation. The recent leaked CRU memos show that even the high priests of climate alarmism are in despair at the failure of nature to follow their forecasts, so they are falsifying the figures to sustain their fantasy. We must now demand a full public inquiry into the suspect data before we spend another penny on mitigation.
Helmer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helmer. I'd now like to hand the floor